Filled with love by Clover.
Welcome back, South Africa, and thank you for staying tuned. Now, what's the one thing that most people reach out for in the morning every day? It is, of course, that one mug that they enjoy their favorite warm beverage in. One other reason, though, to grab your favorite mug is to make this deliciously indulgent chocolate mug cake that is then topped with vanilla ice cream and then generously lathered in our Clover Bliss chocolate medium cream dairy dessert. So to make it simple for you, I've decided to make it a microwave dish. You don't need to go into the oven. You don't need to have any pots on the stove. All you need for this recipe is some flour, self-raising flour in this instance. If you don't have self-raising flour, simple technique, a cup of flour to a teaspoon and a half of baking powder and just a pinch of salt. That's your self-raising powder done. Self-raising flour rather. We've got the flour, we've got some milk, I've got some dark chocolate, cocoa powder, salt, sugar, and some melted butter. And obviously to bring it all together, we've got our Clover Bliss chocolate dairy dessert. And to start off this simple, easy recipe, I'm going to mix my dry ingredients together. So that is our flour going into the bowl there, and then a pinch of salt. As we all know, the reason we add salt into baked goods is because we want that chemical reaction between the sugar and whatever other flour or baking ingredients we've got in there. I've also got my cocoa powder, I've got my sugar as well. And the reason I'm whisking, one is to lighten and fluff up the flour, but also it's to make sure we incorporate all those dry ingredients before we put everything else in there. And now the fun begins because we're going to start incorporating the wet ingredients to our flour or our batter. To start off, I'm going to make a bit of a well in the center, but before I do that, I just remembered, you know me and my chocolate, right? It can't be a mud cake without that chocolate. So you do want those chocolate bits in there. I've got some that's already chopped up, but I can never have enough chocolate, so I always find a way, as usual, to add more and more chocolate and more decadence into my dessert. So I'm going to add a bit more of this chopped chocolate in here. If you don't want to use dark chocolate, you can still use white chocolate. It actually helps with the aesthetic and how it looks afterwards because it's going to have those pebbles of white that's melted inside of the dessert itself. So that goes in there. And like I always say, when you're making a dessert like this, it is always best to mix in your chopped chocolate in there before you add the wet ingredients because you don't want it sinking to the bottom of the batter. And then to mix in our wet ingredients, like I mentioned earlier, we make a well in the center. I start off with some milk. I'm going to add just a little bit and keep a little bit for later in case it's not as runny as I'd like it. I go in with my butter. And then from the Bliss, we're only going to use about 2 tablespoons, so you don't need a lot, but you know me and eyeballing, and it's decadent, so we can add a little bit more. So I've added a bit of my chocolate dairy dessert in there, our Bliss, and you just whisk away. And the other thing I love about this recipe is you don't have to stress about using too many utensils. As you can see, I've been using my whisk, and I haven't used any other utensil yet besides my knife. Remember I mentioned to reserve some of that milk? I'm going to need a bit more just to make sure it comes together nicely, because you don't want it to be too tough. You want it to be a nice, smooth, runny texture, a nice, smooth batter that's going to go into our mug. And the one thing I also love about this dessert is we've put our Clover Bliss into our batter, but we're also going to put it on top of our baked cake. And this literally takes 2 minutes. I'm going to plop it into the microwave now. Because it's got the self-raising agent in there, which is the baking powder, I do suggest that you not fill it up all the way to the top. But the one effect that I like specifically is that once it rises up and I've filled it to the top, it creates somewhat of a collar at the top of the mug. So it's going to basically like a big muffin. You know how those muffins look? It's going to create that. I've not filled it up this time because we obviously don't want that effect. I'm going to plop this into our microwave to cook. Let's go there. And as you can see, I'm just giving it 2 minutes. It's going to bake up for the 2 minutes, and you don't even have to worry about it. The only reason you'd have to watch it is to, obviously, if your microwave is smaller or the reaction is different, you just keep an eye on it. But let it go through the first 2 minutes first before you go back and open the microwave. Because as you would do when you're baking, you don't go back and keep opening your oven as you're baking. You let it do its thing and then keep an eye on it. After the set time that has been mentioned, then you go and check on it. So in this instance, we're giving it the 2 minutes in the microwave. Once it reaches the 2-minute mark and I see that it's not at the desired consistency, then I put it back. But I doubt you'd want to do that because if it's not baked through, then you've got that delicious fondant creamy mixture on the center that's going to work deliciously with our ice cream. So you can, once it's baked, once it's done in the microwave, you could either leave it as is and just top it with some Bliss dessert. If you want to, you can top it up with some ice cream. You can top it up with some fresh berries if you'd like. So I'm gonna make sure that this gets cooked to perfection right now before I even touch it. And I also love the fact that it comes out of the microwave nice and piping hot. I'm going to plop on my ice cream on top of there. It's going to melt nicely and just create somewhat of a pudding texture and consistency, which is what you want to enjoy with this kind of recipe. And the best part about it is you just used your simple mug that's in your house. You don't have to worry about going to get more utensils and all those other things. It's a very simple, very easy recipe. In fact, let me show you guys. It's done. I'm not letting it go through the whole 2 minutes. Look at this amazing, delicious, indulgent recipe. You know what I want to do? I want to pop that ice cream on the top there. But before I do, what I want to do is I'm going to make a little bit of a hole in the center there, and then go in with our ice cream. And I know we've got guests in the studio, guys, but I don't know if I want to share today. I don't feel like I'm in a sharing mood. I really am looking to enjoy this dessert myself. And then finishing touches to our delicious dessert, that Clover Bliss chocolate dessert. I mean, do you not consider this double the indulgence? I do. So to get the recipe, head over to afternoonexpress.co.za. And if you missed the steps, here's a quick recap.
Made with love by Clover.